Hello, Dr. Soil. Welcome to Yellow Space podcast. Today, I'm so glad that we have you. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And now, let's begin with you. Can you please tell us about yourself for our audience who are not familiar with you?
Thank you, Nabila. It's such a great pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me, Yellow Space Podcast. I'm Sohail, and I'm originally from Iran, and but I've been living outside Iran for 17, 18 years. I moved to Australia when I was 24 after my undergraduate degree in Tehran, and in the past 5, 6 years, I've been here in Central Asia and I'm an educator and I'm an academic in the field of communication and media and design studies. And this is simply my life in a very short nutshell.
Thank you. And I'm fortunate enough to be your student. Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. So, the theme and the topic of our today's podcast is education, the importance of education. And as a great example of educator and academic, we are having you. And may I begin with the first question?
Absolutely.
Uh, can you tell us what does education mean to you?
Education, yeah, education. I'm in education, and I've been throughout my life, at least my adult life, and as an educator, as an academic, as a teacher, as a researcher. I started my journey about 14 years ago, and quite accidentally. I always had the dream to be a teacher, but I never thought about it that seriously that one day I would become a teacher. But I was fortunate enough that one of my professors, after my postgraduate master's degree, invited me to teach a course. And that was the beginning of my journey in education. And that goes back to 2010. And I started teaching at the master's level. And I had a course, Sociology of Design, 4 hours per week. And I was almost the same age as my students. And it
Students.
was such a fun experience walking into the classroom. And nobody could believe that I'm the teacher. And and yeah, that is where I started. And since then, um, I've been just developing my skills and my knowledge and for my students because it's such a great responsibility
Definitely.
when you walk into the classroom and you're in the position of a teacher. You should be able to do justice to the course you teach, to the topics, and that takes a lot of effort in preparation for every class. And of course, outside the classroom, it's been always my passion reading books, independently of any institution, schools, universities. I have had this passion with me since I was very young, and I think that education means passion for learning and passion for sharing, and the students can tell that very quickly. If they don't see that passion in you, they know it just on the first day.
Exactly. Thank you. What I really like that passion is passion for learning and sharing it, and you almost shaped your career
Mhm.
in adult life, as you mentioned, around education. Uh, can we go a little bit back,
Mhm.
maybe to before your career? How your education started, and how it shaped you as a person, and then it made you ready for starting and teaching master degree, which is really amazing. Like your first experience is teaching master degrees. That's quite yeah,
Challenging. It was very
yeah,
challenging.
challenging.
Yeah.
So can you tell us before that, how did you start school, your
Mm.
education? You mentioned that you were a fan of books. You read books a lot.
Yeah.
So can we go back to years?
Sure. Absolutely. I've been throughout my life very independent.
Hmm.
And I always say to my students that more than 80% of what I know today, I learned it myself by myself. And I was try to convey this message to the students that never rely on any school or any university or any classroom or any course. Every course or any classroom or any teacher can trigger some ideas in your mind, but they're not going to take you throughout the entire journey that you can go by yourself. So you learn few lessons, but then that's your responsibility to take it further. When I was only 5 or 6, I started drawing, and I was so obsessed with drawing, even at that age. And I learned it by myself. Of course, I couldn't have a teacher at that age, but I started drawing and copying every image I could find in any magazine or any book. And then I started experimenting with some other art activities. I really liked art, and especially traditional crafts. And at the same time, simultaneously reading books way beyond my age. When I was 8 or 9 or 10, I was reading books that maybe a person at the age of 40, 50, 60 could read. And I had no hesitation, and I had no fear of just throwing myself into a book and exploring that world to whatever extent I could understand. I never had the fear of, oh, I don't understand, this is not for me. And if I couldn't understand something, that was an extra motivation for me to continue. And I said, I have to understand it, and I keep reading until I understand it. So that was my background. That was where I came from. Being independent and explore and read, and don't wait until somebody comes to teach you. And of course, teachers, I had amazing teachers throughout my life. I had amazing, university professors. But I always pursued my own passion independently of any system, of any curriculum, or of any book. I was just exploring and gathering and just soaking myself in the world of ideas. And that's why I told you that I had the passion to be a teacher one day, but I never thought about it as a really pragmatic, my future plan, my future career, my future life. But it was at the back of my mind that, yeah, I want to share. I think teaching and education is all about sharing.
Sharing.
It's like that you're sitting around a bonfire and you share stories. That's exactly the beginning of education back in ancient times.
Very nice. I'm quite impressed. 5, 6 years old boy with start reading and drawing. What I understood is you're very much into self-education, self-study.
Exactly.
And can you please talk about the importance of self-study nowadays? Having all these equipments, internet, because as a student, sometimes I also have this expectation that, oh, nobody told me what to do.
Yeah.
But nowadays we have all this information and data. And how do you compare that with the time back then that you were studying? And you said that resources were limited, but still
Absolutely.
you had this determination to read and write and learn by yourself. I can see how that liberty from the expectation helped you to be where you are. That's amazing. What do you want to say to our audience who have a little bit of that expectation maybe, and considering the technology that nowadays we have? How do you see the role of technology in education and how that can help young people who are limited in sources or to educate themselves?
I think self-study is the most important part of education. As I said that, I think every learned person has gone through this journey. You have to throw yourself into the world of unknowns and then try to find your fit in it and try to understand what all these different ideas and concepts and histories and experiences would mean to you, because it's very important that you contextualize what you learn in your own existence, in your own being, in your own evolving self throughout time. That, okay, I read the book, it's about history, but what is my takeaway from it? And self-study is extremely important. And unfortunately, at that time, maybe 30, 35 years ago, I had only access to a few books, and I could go to some libraries, of course. But there was no internet. There was no social media, and there was no YouTube. And for me, for example, learning some traditional crafts like wood carving. So I tried it until I learned it. There was nobody standing next to me and say, you don't do it that way, you have to do it this way, you have to hold the saw this way in your hand, that's not how you cut the wood. So I did it all by myself. I learned it by failing. And there was no tutorial on YouTube to go and watch that how we should do it. So, but if we talk about today's world and we talk about education in our today's world, of course, there is so much information, there is so much content available to every single individual. And there is no issue whatsoever with the content. The content is there. And the content is at our disposal. It's just at our fingertip. You just press a button, there is so much you can find about any topic, any topic. However, I don't think that desire, that burning desire in us is there. It seems that as we moved on and as we increased the volume of information and content, the desire has receded. And because we think that everything is available. I can just open my YouTube and then I can just search a video and it's just there. And just that, having that feeling that something is there, something is always there for me, it kind of, I think, has affected our desire, has affected our curiosity, has affected our directedness. Because, when you direct yourself to something, when you just put yourself in relation to a topic, to a question, and you interrogate it, you try to form your own ideas about it. Of course, at any given moment, there's only so much information available to you, but you don't lose that passion. You just keep going and you keep pushing and you keep experimenting. So there is a lot to learn in that process. But when I think that everything is available, I just need to reach for my mobile phone, and then the entire world would be available to me. Then maybe I just sit back and relax. I say, I don't really need to go out there and try too hard. I can just search it tonight and I will find the answer. So I think that that definitely has had some sort of negative impact on our curiosity on a very general level. So, and that has impacted definitely our younger generations' ways of learning. We are in a completely different paradigm of education.
Can I just add one more question here? Have you felt that about the young generation in Central Asia as well?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that I made this decision to continue my journey here in Central Asia. I studied in Australia and I started my academic career in Australia, and at some point, quite accidentally, I came across an opportunity to be in Central Asia and to be closer to my country of origin, Iran, in the same region. And I had the passion and curiosity to learn that what sort of people are living in this part of the world. This part of the world is extremely significant geopolitically. However, it's been historically overlooked for different reasons. So it was a trove of ideas and invisible things to the outside world. So that brought me here. And I think what I found here amongst the students and amongst the communities of learners, they're extremely passionate. They understand slightly better and more about the significance of education than their counterparts, maybe in some Western countries, in some maybe larger universities, because education here still really matters for its own sake. And however, universities have evolved so much in the past 20, 30, 40 years. We are talking about corporate universities nowadays. And when you are in corporate university settings, Obviously, education is of a different kind, and the students have different attitude and approaches. So here, I think I'm closer to that very traditional, more historical desire for learning and growing, and also giving back. So it's not that individualistic that I just learn and I just get a job and then I just go to get on with my life. So there is a passion to give back. And
Still in this region.
in this region, it's underdeveloped, of course. I should hesitate to use the word underdeveloped. I don't agree with this kind of terminologies, but countries struggling to present themselves on a global stage, and countries and nations and ethnicities and communities struggling to find out more about their identities, about their past, and about these contemporary world issues and problems, global warming, mass migration, and economic problems and issues. So our students are coming from that much broader and deeper perspective on life, and that's quite exciting for me.
Very nice. Here, I formed another thought, and I was wondering, what do you think? How Central Asian students, young generation, with being privileged, having these deep historical values and the passion for education that you mentioned, how they can keep that and utilize the technology? What do we have in education nowadays for the prosperity of this region? How do you see the best, how to say, version or type approach of education in Central Asia that would work for the rebuilding and building these societies in Central Asia, as you mentioned, the underdeveloped, developing countries. So, how these students can take um, whatever they had from the past and take whatever is available now to use it and utilize it for the economic growth and prosperity of Central Asian countries.
I think they will be playing, and they're already playing a very significant role. Obviously, the younger generation right now in Central Asia, they're bridging the gap between two eras in the
Yes.
history of their communities, countries, and that's a very heavy weight of the past, and a kind of an open horizon of many opportunities and many changes that are right now happening in technology, in politics, in our society, in our mindset, in our understandings. So they are, I think, at a kind of a very historical crossroads, and and I think they might feel the burden of this responsibility, and they might have that enthusiasm and passion and commitment to creating something greater for their communities. I feel that, I see that, and I think they should really retain and maintain that extremely profound relationship they have with their communities, with their families, with their neighborhoods. So, and it is extremely important that this new generation of learners and explorers, hopefully, could redefine their own identity and, by extension, the identity of their communities in the midst of all these quite chaotic changes. So it's a very difficult journey, and of course, economy comes first whenever we talk about education and future and lives. So most of us think in terms of economic terms.
Yes.
So what would be the return of education? How can I financially help my family? How can I create a business that would help my community? So, and all those concerns are well understood. But the role of education and the significance of education, I believe, this is my personal belief, um, should be understood beyond economic values. So it's about creating humans, creating our humanistic approaches in life and our responsibility towards each other. And of course, we are living in the age our consciousness is filled with worries about future, filled with worries about climate and nature and the future of humanity and so on. And and of course, we should feel the same responsibility towards more than human worlds. And we should not only care about humans. It's extremely important that we should care about humans, but there are other living beings, and there is this magnificent and amazing natural environments that we are part of it, and we should feel responsible towards them as well. And I think this is the challenge, but I see there is great potential and there is great desire, and hopefully education institutions can also do their own part.
Thank you. What do you think how these challenges could be addressed by personally by the students themselves? Because you mentioned you also came from Iran, not so far from here,
Yeah.
and it's not also a very developed country
Yes.
like this region. What do you think? Which kind of how these challenges should be looked at and addressed from a personal perspective, and how the education could be developed on a bigger level. So here it's your personal part that you have to study and value education, and which kind of support do you think our education needs in terms of which kind of supports students in education or people around education, involved in education, need to receive to tackle these challenges? Because one commitment should come from a personal level, but here there might be some supports needed from bigger networks and institutions.
Absolutely. You know, it's a community work. You know, no one single person can change things
Yes.
these days, because the world is overcomplicated. And in terms of technology, in terms of science, in terms of politics. So it's a collective effort. And when we talk about any collective effort, we're talking about culture. So I believe to tackle these issues and to find some reasonable response to these issues, we need to work together, and we need to form deeper and more empathetic understandings towards each other. You know, and we are living in this hyper globalized world. It's a hyper globalized world, and in this hyper globalized world, people in this part of the world might feel the pressure that, okay, what can I do? Do I have any power? And I don't have any even enough resources to make sure that my community can get by. So what can I do? I think this is a question in the minds of most of the people, that what can I do? And I think here education comes in. And the role of education is to create platforms for dialogues, and to create platforms for exchanging ideas in a respectful manner, and teach people that we can succeed only together. So there would be no success outside the community. So we have learned many lessons from history, and that individualism, and especially very aggressive individualism, that is only me and my life, you know, and what makes me happy, and how can I build my own life, has resulted in many catastrophic scenarios. We need to come together. We need to have that empathy and sympathy, and we need to work together. And we need to find a way that we address these issues at the global level by looking into our own local histories. So I think it's extremely important in today's world that we connect our global networks and global businesses and our global activities with the concerns of our own local communities.
Definitely.
That gap has to be bridged. So for too long, we have gone too far in one direction, to think that our prosperity lies in globalization, in just bringing people from different parts of the world, do business with them, and forget about just the farmers, living down the road from my place. So we have learned these lessons that we can't have that one-dimensional approach. It's a multifaceted, it's a multidimensional work that we need to do it together. So my approach is our students should understand the significance of this globalized world and equally should understand the significance and the beauty of our community lives. How do we marry these two concepts? I think that's a challenge ahead of us. But I believe the talents and the potential that our students have shown in this part of the world, we can create something better.
Thank you. And I think you're leading by example, coming from Iran and then Australia and coming back to Central Asia to work with us. And I, coming from Afghanistan here, I think we can do a lot working for education together. So now I'm going to ask an interesting question. It's about a memory or any interesting flashback that you have from your teaching or studying time. As someone who has, I think, all your life you have been educating yourself and others.
Yeah.
So, and a lifetime student, I would say, I would call you. What are your best memories from education? Any memory from your time of being student and now having students?
I love learning, and I think for me, teaching is also learning, and it's co-learning. As much as your students learn, you learn as well. And I've had amazing, amazing times and a lot of great memories with my students. And what is most heartwarming as a teacher, you never know what you say in the classroom would mean to your students. You can never know that. You might try to guess. You might try to guess in your mind, maybe that's a student, maybe this is a student, maybe they liked the topic, maybe they didn't. But you can never ever know with certainty that what impact you're making on the minds of your students until sometimes years after. I've had moments where my students after years.
Have you met anybody you didn't expect? Like, or
nowadays it's easy to find people. And I think they just searched my name and they found where I am. And then they could find my university, for example, email address, and they just wrote to me. And after years, they reminded me, for example, of a conversation outside of the classroom that day, that year. And it takes me back. It's so powerful that I have to review all the memories. First to remember the name of my student, and then to remember that conversation I had. And then when they talk to me, and then they tell me that what impact that conversation had on their life, it's mind-blowing. Sometimes it just moves me into tears that, wow, this is amazing. I never thought that just a conversation, a casual conversation about a topical issue of the day. Something happened in a country and then we had a conversation about politics or something. And that resonated so deeply with that mind. And after years, that person has found me again and reflecting on that and writing to me about it. And I have had few great moments of such kind of moments that my students, my former students, found me and wrote to me and reminded me of a topic, of a conversation, just an idea, a book, and how that changed their life. So that really drives me forward in education. Then I can think to myself that, okay, I did my job. And I think, yeah, that is what I wanted. I wanted to inspire, I wanted to maybe to sow a seed in somebody's mind. Yeah, now I see the result. It's such an honorable, it's such a humbling profession, education for me.
Very nice. The education that you said, it's not just special to a classroom, a table and chair.
Not at all.
It can happen at any point, at any
Not at all.
conversation. And how it can impact a life, an individual.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So I have another question related to where I come from, Afghanistan. How do you see the education in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in this region, in Central Asia, their future of education? What do you think about that?
It's difficult. It really hits me close to my heart because I come from Iran and
Neighboring.
neighboring, and that's my feeling that these are just modern borders between our peoples. I would rather call them our peoples. And we used to live more closely, and nowadays, due to geopolitics, these national borders and nation states, and we are separated. But I feel so much for my fellow country people in Iran, for the younger generations. I feel so much for my Afghan fellow people, and in Pakistan the same, in Central Asia the same. Of course, every country has its own problems, but in Afghanistan, in the past few years, we know that life hasn't been that easy, and it's not easy at all. Maybe for women, and you as a wonderful Afghan woman, aspiring to achieve something greater for yourself and for your community. It's not easy, but I can see the potential. We do interviews our new students for our admission, and I had an experience a few months ago, last year, for our new cohorts, where I met a woman from the north of Pakistan, and sitting in a very humble room, and I could only imagine that maybe she went through so much difficulty to facilitate that connection.
That
interview. I don't know the laptop. I don't know the internet connection. Finding a quiet room. I can only imagine that that wouldn't have been that easy and convenient. And then the conversation I had with her, and listening to her and her vision for her future and the future of her family and the future of her community, and how much she knows and how much she's committed to this life project. She was on a mission, and I could feel that she's literally on a mission. And I enjoyed. I think it wasn't an interview. After some point, it became a conversation, and I wanted to know more about her and how inspiring she was to me. And after the interview, I texted my wife. I said I just finished an interview with a very young woman, and this interview and this conversation reminded me of who I am and why I'm an educator, and why I have to continue in this profession, and to see that how these young people, massively under-resourced and hugely under pressure, and yet how driven they are, how visionary they are. And I don't think anybody or any force or any politics or any constraint can hold back this generation of young, driven, determined, committed, visionary, highly creative people. If you put it in the context of time and history, this is just very short period of time, and I'm sure that our fellow people will overcome the challenges they're facing, and I think you yourself is a living example, sitting right in front of me.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if she can watch our podcast.
I hope,
but she might be here.
maybe.
Will she?
Can
Can you reveal that?
I
for us?
yeah, I hope I don't remember her name, unfortunately, but I remember her face and the room that she was and the whole context of our conversation. And I hope that she can find this conversation now online somewhere. And I don't know where she is. I don't know really. And I hope wherever she is, I'm sure she's going to be a very successful, living example of a very powerful, very strong woman,
Passionate for education.
passion for education and learning and change. And I really wish the best for her
Me
from the bottom
too.
of my heart.
You mentioned the humble room. I remembered my own humble room. Uh, it was such a humble room,
Yeah,
actually. So many humble rooms, I would say.
exactly, exactly.
Um, yeah, that's so inspiring, and I hope that you will be one of our fellows here.
I hope so. Yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing her. I don't know. I maybe I should just go back to our documents and see whether she made it or not. But
But here's the question: did you approve for?
yeah, absolutely,
Definitely.
absolutely. That was certainly from my side, big plus, big tick. Yes.
Very nice. And what I like about our university, or where we study, and with the teachers like you that we study, um, I was also thinking with myself that, yeah, I had so many problems getting my education, but being able to continue it and then being seen by a teacher, because I also had an interview with one of our faculties. What I really liked, that I also was in one of those humble rooms, and the opportunity was given to me, and now I'm sitting and discussing with you. And what I really like about here in Central Asia, I see so many international students, as an international student, uh, who could simply be denied of education, who couldn't access it. But
Absolutely.
now I'm very glad that I ended up in Central Asia, and now I have this opportunity, and I hope the same for our sister
Mm,
who shall end
very
up
beautiful.
here or even better place. So, what's your message for young generation in Central Asia? Any sentence, any of your stories, personal stories, and what's your message for them?
Keep learning and keep going and don't wait for a miracle and
Mm,
don't wait for somebody, a mythical figure might just appear on the horizon and delivers a message to you or teaches you something. We teachers, yes, we try to do our best, but every teaching opportunity can go only so far. I believe that we have this responsibility to keep our keep our minds, keep our hearts open to learning and exploring and having the courage. We have to pluck this courage to go out and to learn by ourselves and explore and experiment. And we shouldn't be afraid of failing. I know that we are living under social, political, economic conditions under which failure is something quite negative.
oh yeah.
And if you fail, there might be some stigmatization in our society that the guy just failed, and we might get branded, or we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't really listen to such kind of negative views, and we should try ourselves. We should try to actualize and realize the best of ourselves. So I think that's our responsibility in life. Life is an opportunity, and in this very wonderful opportunity, we have the responsibility to create a better self. And go for it, and don't wait. Don't wait. There will be no miracle. You will create the miracle. And
Yourself. And you're here helping us.
absolutely, well, I would like to be part of these journeys, and I encourage my students, and my students know me that I'm not that outcome-driven person in education,
Mm,
because for me the outcome is the process, and you have to value the process that sometimes goes quite bumpy, sometimes quite difficult. Sometimes you face different obstacles, and you face difficult questions and problems. But be courageous, stay courageous, and be creative, and exercise self-learning. There's nothing more important than self-learning.
I think this is amazing that we're discussing. You're discussing it because our audience are mostly from Central Asian countries like Iran, Afghanistan, and uh, we are coming from those backgrounds and societies. And I think this is a very real suggestion, applicable, feasible for them to do. And if you could do that, I'm sure
We can do it together.
together.
And I've had role models in my life. Well, of course, I always have some really great people, at least to me, in my mind.
I wanted to ask one of the teachers that you will never forget, or somebody whom you met and learned you outside, taught you outside of classroom.
There are many. There are really many. And I've had teachers with whom I've had many classes, and I learned definitely from them. But I may not remember as the most inspirational teacher I had. And I've had teachers with whom I had only one class. And I still remember the face, even after 20 years. I still remember his voice or her voice. And I still remember the topics. And I still remember the moment I was waiting outside the classroom until he comes out of the classroom. And I can walk with him and taking his time, of course. I may not be the most pleasant student and annoying teachers outside the classroom, but I enjoyed it. And just walking with him to the faculty office and sitting for 45 minutes beyond the class time and discuss a topic we just finished it in the class. So, and they have been extremely formative, extremely inspirational, and no way I can forget them. And I have had such kind of professors and teachers throughout my life.
That's amazing. A big salute to all of them, wherever
Absolutely,
they are.
wherever they are. And I never forget them. And they've been amazing people, and they have changed lives, definitely. And they were a big motivation and inspiration to me, and maybe many more students at that time. And I'm sure that many of other students have done amazing things in their lives as a result of their teaching.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
My
And
pleasure.
if you wanted to add something,
No, my
in the
absolute
end.
pleasure. Thank you so much, Nabila, for conducting an interview about education in times of many crises in our world and many worries. And we should still feel optimistic,
Optimism.
and we should always exert ourselves to the most important and significant tasks and questions and problems. We should stay driven by questioning and by thinking and by experimenting. And it was such a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I think that wraps up our podcast. Thank you so much. Yeah,
A pleasure.
that's
All the best.
Thank you.
All the best.
And I hope that we will do good in your course.
Hopefully. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All the best. All the best to everybody watching us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who's watching us. Dr. Suhail Ashrafi, thank you so much again for being here. And I had such a good time. I don't know how it passed. Looking forward to our next and continuous podcast on different themes and topics. Yeah, that's all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Looking
good
forward
day.
to it. Good day.